Thank you, Minister. My question relates to a fox hunting report that I sent on to you, which acknowledges that a fox was chased by 37 hounds for over 13 miles. And my question relates to the fact that it's time that I think we decided that this was extremely cruel, it's not sport, and it's time that this fox hunting was exempted from the Animal Welfare Act.
Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, no, let me just answer you directly rather than reading out a long answer to you, because you'll get this anyway. But I read the report that you sent me, and this was a report. It was a description basically of a hunt that took place, where a fox was chased by a pack of hounds and a hunt club across, I think, 13.6 was it kilometres or miles? I can't remember. The fox then went to ground, and that was the end of the hunt, as far as I know. So, we've discussed these issues many times. I know your views on fox hunting, and I respect them. But, I made the decision, as did others, when we discussed the animal health and welfare legislation, that instead of, banning field sports, as they're called, we would look at at regulation. We would put codes of conduct in place. My department is making contact with hunt clubs to make sure that the codes of conduct that are there at the moment as voluntary codes of conduct would actually be put into a formal code. That the department would be part of putting together and negotiating, which is very much part of what we're required to do anyway under the animal health and welfare legislation. So, I'm not going to get into the debate now as to whether we should or shouldn't have fox hunting in Ireland. We've made our decision on that in the health and welfare legislation, animal health and welfare legislation, where there is a specific exception for fishing, for hunting, and so on. But having said that, within hunting, there are pretty clear. There's a very clear statement which says, lawful hunting of an animal unless the animal is released in an injured, mutilated, or exhausted condition, and that is the exception that applies to hunting. So, there are tighter regulations and rules now relating to hunting than there's ever been because of that welfare legislation. We're going to add to them further now by putting codes of conduct in place. It's not what you want, I know, which is an outright ban, but I think it certainly will reassure a lot of people who are comfortable with hunting as long as there are certain parameters.
Thank you, Minister.
That people have to operate within, and that will be the basis for the new codes of conduct that we're putting in place.
Maureen O'Sullivan.
Okay, well, let's look at what is involved in fox hunting. The first part is we have the marking to ground, which is where the pack of hounds will chase the fox into the drain or into the earth. Then the terrier man comes along and sends the terrier down the drain, down the hole, to attack or corner the fox. And then after that, the people around start to dig the clay away and the fox is exposed. It's an extremely cruel practice of this digging out of foxes. We know that. And all the regulation in the world, there are people who are so dedicated to hunting that they're going to find a way around this. So it is cruel. It is not a support at all. It's not just one isolated incident that I sent to you. We have others like that. Now, I came across an advertisement which struck me. What can be better than a day's fox hunting in Ireland? The cry of the hounds, the sound of the hunting horn, the thrill of jumping over natural fences, and the sheer style of this equestrian sport is available to everyone at. Why not join us for the fox hunting holiday of a lifetime? We have 18 hunting clubs. We'd be delighted to arrange your fox hunting vacation in Ireland, and then you can have the crack in the Irish pub afterwards. We are facilitating in this country people to come over here for fox hunting, a practice which is banned in so many other countries, and we call this sport.
Minister?
Yeah, look, I don't want to get into the debate that we had during the passing of the legislation that we were talking about earlier. I don't know, by the way, whether there was any digging out involved in the hunt description that you sent to me. There's no mention of it one way or the other. But we have made very clear, and I made very clear during the debate on these issues, that we would also look at making sure that that animals, in terms of a digging out of an animal, that there would be certain conditions required when that takes place. And I can remember having many meetings on this issue with representative bodies for working terrier groups, as well as NGOs and so on. And we tried to get a balance here as best we could in the legislation. In terms of what you're just reading out there, I mean, like, a lot of people enjoy hunting. They enjoy running across riding across the countryside on horseback. There are, many successful drag hunts in Ireland that do that.
Thank you, Minister.
And there are others that are full fox hunts. My obligation as a minister and as a legislator, in my view, is to put rules and regulations in place to make sure that this is done in as acceptable a way as possible from a welfare point of view.
Thank you.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan.
Yeah. Minister, there was a time when we were hunters and gatherers and we had to hunt animals for food. We don't have to do that anymore. So as far as I'm concerned, there's a shame on us as a nation that we are tolerating barbarity and cruelty to animals in the name of what is supposed to be a sport. It's hard to believe that we are still continuing with barbaric practices, and everybody acknowledges how far the bill went, but it just didn't go far enough. And you know, and I know, that the hunting clubs in this country are finding loopholes. We saw it with the stag hunting recently out in County Meath, that they found a loophole in the legislation which allows them, because they caught the scent of a stag, to continue to hunt it. You mentioned there drag hunting, and why can we not be actively supporting that whole nature of drag hunting and leave the live pursuit of animals who usually end up being pulled apart by whatever animal is chasing them, and leave that to something else, to bygone days, because that's where it belongs.
Thank
Minister.
you. The final reply, Minister.
Well, first of all, I'm not sure it's true to say that usually an animal gets pulled apart. The fox normally escapes from my experience of hunting. Not that I have a huge amount of experience of it, but any time I have had experience, I've never seen a fox being pulled apart, but I'm sure it happens, right? And I'm not saying it doesn't. Look, as I said before, the decisions we've made on this from a policy perspective is to try and get a balance that allows people who derive a huge amount of enjoyment out of hunting, also farmers who want foxes hunted off their land. And by the way, if you've seen a field of lambs that have been killed by a fox, you'll see a pretty gruesome pulling apart of an animal that involves, the fox being the predator rather than the other way around. So, foxes are wild animals and can be vicious at times and can do significant damage to farm animals and poultry and so on. Having said that, that's not what you're raising. I know that. I'm not willing to go as far as you'd like me to, but we are doing what we can to ensure that we put parameters and rules and codes of conduct in place to make sure that fox hunting takes place in as acceptable way as we can from a welfare perspective for all of the animals.
Murphy is the next question.